Hello, my friends. Andrew Blake from thedigital-audio-manual.com. Today I want to share a video of how I store and create my projects in Cubase. The folder structure in Cubase, how you create your projects, how you back up your projects, where you put your audio files, how you incorporate your audio files. To a new Cubase user, these things can be very daunting. And to be honest, even after you have a little experience with Cubase, the subject can still be a little bit misty. In the previous days, I used to take great care in creating the files and the folders. When I first started any project, probably because I was led that way, other people, other information I was looking at. But over time, that just didn't work for me any longer. There was actually a period where I was writing a song a day, and sometimes multiple songs, and to try to decide, first of all, what the title of the song was going to be, if I was even going to keep that version, or whether that was going to wind up on the cutting room floor, so to speak, and then being concerned about what files I was bringing into the song. All of this trying to happen before I laid my first drum beat down. It just wasn't working. I needed to be able to get into the song and get into my music quickly, keep the inspiration going, and not have to put too much thought into that part of it. So I developed a system for myself where I had one major folder that everything went into initially. I'm going to explain that in more detail in a few minutes here. But the other thing, and I'm sure most of you are doing this, is to always work from a template. And most of the time, one major template. And as time goes on and things develop, then that template's going to develop. And that's what I would do. If I found new instruments I used all the time, or a new setting that was coming up all the time, eventually that stuff all wound up in my template. When you look at the hub in front of us, I have a few different templates here, but I can tell you, they hardly ever get used. The only one that gets used is my one primary, what I call progressive house template. But that's just the name that's been stuck on there for the longest time. I could have just as easily called it my master template or my everyday template, and maybe someday I will change it, but I'm just used to this title, and I know I'm going to click on it. The other thing is, because I have one major folder that everything goes into initially, down here on the bottom of the hub, there's an option that says use the default location. There's the other one that says prompt for the project location and the project folder and all these things. I leave it on this use default location, and in this field, I have that default location. This screen never changes. And some of you may think this is a terrible way to work, or it's just not the way you want to go. These are things you're going to have to make up your own mind about. But this is all I do. I have this one default location, and I let it create a new name over here on the right every time, and I never even think about it, to be honest. So the very first breakdown, when I'm running with my inspiration, and I want to get going on things, I open up Cubase with the hub here. I click on this master project template that I have, which then opens up this project. And most of the time, I will save it right away. That's the smart thing to do. But there's been a time or two where I'm just so quick to want to get something happening that I have to get an idea down right away. But I always advise, first thing to do is save this thing. So again, my initial first move is hit Control-S, where then I am prompted to give this new project some kind of name. Now, a second ago, it went into that default folder. It's going to remain in that default folder, and nothing is going to change there. In the beginning, again, I don't have time to think about it. The way I usually name things is I typically just call it the date. For our example today, this is 7/2/24. Now, this is just the first song of the day. Before this day is out, I may come back here 2 or 3 times with other songs and other ideas or any number of projects. And those are going to get named 7/2/24A, 7/2/24B, or any other variation that I need to know. They're all going to get named from the same day where everything starts to get created. Now, don't get me wrong. If I have something particular that I know for a title is what I need, for example, if I'm saying working with a media bay, or I'm working on a song that I know I'm going to call Sunshine, then I will save it with those specific bits of information. But what I'm trying to get across is I don't let my lack of information ever slow me down. If I know I've got to get to something and create something or get an idea out, that's the first and foremost thing, and I'll worry about those details later. And I'll show you, and it's time to be concerned about those details. And in fact, the whole mindset kind of shifts from one of creative chaos into a very specific, organized mindset. But continuing on, so off I go. I hit the save button, and I begin composing. Now again, I've created a template. All the tracks that I usually start with are already ready to go. Typically in my scenario, I'm opening up a chord track. I'm dragging some chords into the project. Who can say what's best? This is like your signature. Your setup could be so completely different from mine depending on what you're trying to achieve. But let me get some basic ideas down here. so I can show you the important part when you do need to pay attention to how you're saving things and backing them up. So I get my basic idea going here. Let's add some drums in here. Let's get a bass part going. Good enough. So now we have a basic idea here. And let's say this is 32 tracks later, and this thing has been mixed and everything else I want to do to it. First of all, because it was saved right away, all I have to do as I'm going through this is hit Control Save, and everything is backed up quickly without a lot of thought. And the most important thing is the music is getting created, or whatever it is I'm trying to do. But now it is important to start paying attention to a few things, because otherwise all of your hard work could be for a lot of nothing. The first thing I want to pay attention to here, let's talk about if you've brought some files in from someplace else on your computer. As you're working with Cubase, and you work with things maybe like the media bay, or any of the preset samples, or any of these other things that come with Cubase, as you bring things into Cubase, for example, if I open up these drum loops, and I play a few, audition a few, then I decide to bring one into Cubase by dragging it in, things like this are automatically put in the pool and become part of your project. So ultimately, when you back up your project like we're going to talk about, you don't have to worry so much about things like this. You can be sure they're going to be part of your project. They're going to be remembered. What you may have to be careful about, if you go off into some other location on your computer, for example, I'm looking at my documents folder, maybe I have some samples out here, and for whatever reason I drag them in from my documents, bring them into Cubase, just drag them in. Depending on the settings I have and my preferences, this may or may not be actually included the way it needs to be. And if you have any question about that, you may want to check this particular setting. If you go to Edit, down to your Preferences, then under the Editing, you go to Audio. You're going to see something here that says On Import Audio Files. And there's a drop down here that says Use Settings. And right now I have the options checked that I want, meaning that the audio is going to be included into Cubase without me having to do anything else. But if this option is set, open the options dialog, and you drag a piece of audio in, you're going to get a dialog just like this, and it's going to ask you if you want to import your audio and things like that, and you're going to want to make those decisions. I like to keep this option of copy all my files to the project folder, and then the option that says convert to project settings, because that takes care of my sample rates. And then I know if I brought something in from my documents or something, I know it's included in the Cubase audio folder. Now, I want to take a minute and show you what I mean by my default folders. Typically, all my Cubase projects are on my main C hard drive. I have another hard drive. It's labeled B on this computer. And on that drive, I have a Cubase folder. When I open up that Cubase folder, I have a folder here that I've actually called Dump. And I know that's a heck of a name. Now, if I open up that folder, I have a whole list of a bunch of stuff that just says Untitled. And trying to find something in here, not an easy task. It is labeled by date, so if I need that. But basically, everything I've created over the last few months winds up in this Dump folder. And then once I finally graduate this song, project, whatever I'm working on, to the point where I know I'm going to keep it or it's going to stick around longer than a day, this stuff is going to get moved, and I'm going to show you that in a second. And eventually, after about 3 months, because of the enormous space this Dump folder takes up with all these extra ideas and songs that maybe never made it, or projects that never made it, all the ones that did make it, it's not uncommon for me to go back 2 or 3 months in the past and just erase everything here and start over. I typically keep the most recent months all the time. I'm constantly purging this, like the last 6 months, and just removing it, because this stuff is ancient history, and it was only here to catch the ideas quickly. Now, moving on to what is important, let's say we have decided this is now something that is important to us. This song or project or whatever we have here is now going to stick around, maybe forever, and we want to move it to a little higher priority. That's when I move on to this next step, where I go up to File, come down to the option that says Back Up the Project. At this point, I choose a drive or location where the files that have some importance to me are stored, and I actually file those by year. For example, we're in 2024, so I have a folder of 2024 projects and songs. This will grow over the year as I keep adding new things to it. But once I open up this 2024 folder, I create a new folder, and here's the first time I'm really concerned about what I title here. What is this song, what is this project going to be called in its final mixdown state? For our example, let's just call it Twilight. You'll always need a brand new folder when you're going to back up a project. So I call it Twilight, I say select the folder. Now I have a list of options that you can make all kinds of choices with. This is the point where you can remove unused files to save space. You can tell it to minimize audio files, which will take any kinds of cuts you've made, make them permanent. You can tell it not to back up the mixdown folder. All kinds of things you can decide here. You can make your direct offline processing permanent, which most of the time I do. But once again, I have to give this project a name. Since I only called it the date, this is the point where I have to do something important here. So I'm going to call this Twilight. And then I hit OK. Now Cubase makes a very organized set of files and folders, and this is where everything becomes into that really organized state. Prior to that, it's been pretty much a creative dash to get wherever I'm trying to get to. But now it's time to pay a little bit more attention because I want to know 3 or 4 years from now, when I come back to this, I'm going to be able to find it and everything is going to be where it belongs. And if I want to transfer this song later to some other hard drive, I can be confident that everything I need is all in one place. Let's examine what Cubase did with that new backed up project. Again, if I open up my folder and I navigate to what I called my 2024 folder, and I look for the folder that says Twilight because that's where we just saved everything, before I even open it, I can see that it put the correct date from the time that I actually saved it just now. And I'm going to go ahead and open up this folder, and I can see that it put the actual project in here, which is the most important. I'm going to show you that in a second. At the top, I have an audio folder. If I click on this audio folder, I have copies of all my audio files. Everything is where it needs to be. I know that no matter what hard drive I put this on, all these audio files are in place. Now in this project, because it was just a little demo project, there's only 4 little audio files. This could be filled with 50 or 60 different audio files or more, but that's all good to go. Any images, peak files, things like that, they're in this folder. These are pictures of the waves, things like that. But this thing is now good to go. Now a couple of other things that I usually do differently. Cubase gives us the option, as we're going through things, to come down here and save a new version. Personally, I hardly ever do this, unless I'm in the biggest rush possible. I just find no value in creating a song that says Twilight number 1, Twilight number 2, because that tells me nothing later when I need to know it. Typically what I do instead is always do a save as. And then as things progress, for example, maybe this is going to be Twilight mix number 1. Or maybe this is going to be Twilight where all files have been normalized. Or anything like that. Anything that's got a major change to it that I need to remember or know, I will do that. I'll give it the name of the song, some short explanation of what I've done to it. Of course, the dates are automatically added anyway. But this is where it grows from for any final work. And this is where it lives and exists forever after. Now, there's all kinds of other things to consider. We could talk about the option of when you export audio files. For example, if I quickly take these and I choose to export, there's all kinds of options in here, maybe what I choose, what folders do I want. There's just so many things to cover and talk about. We'll leave those for another addition to this video. But for a basic workflow, that's how it goes down for me. Everything goes into the dump folder to start with. Everything is started from a template to begin with. And then, by the way, if you don't know this, as you create your templates or they continue to evolve, under your file you have the option to save as template. So if you need to update that, you just do it there. But then ultimately, once things have been decided that this is more than just a passing thing, that this is a serious project that I want to keep developing, or that I've actually finished and I just want to archive it, it goes on to the file and the backup project. At that point, a lot of extraneous information is basically just left behind. And it now moves on to a new clean set of folders, and that file is ready to be archived, or I can use that when I move on to mastering or any number of things. But those are the development stages, and that's how I save and load my folders and files. So I hope that was helpful, give you some insight to things, and we'll continue to explore all these different options as we learn about Cubase. As always, it's great to share this information, and I'll see you on the next video. All right, it's going to wrap it up for today. As always, if you haven't already, click the link in the description of this video to learn how you can get access to the all-new Digital Audio Manual Preferred. It's the clear, step-by-step solution showing you not only the tips, but all the secret and typically never talked about features that'll take you to a higher level of using your software. If you've been searching for an all-in-one solution to take you from start to finish and learning Cubase and Wavelab and other music software, this is exactly what you've been looking for. So click on the link in the description and come and be part of the clear path to a better learning experience. So today I took you on a little tour of the way I do things when it comes to setting up the files and the folders, creating your projects, ultimately how to back them up. And I'll be the first to admit that many of the things I do, I pretty much take the mad scientist approach, and that may not be for everybody. But the goal here is that I'm trying to make you think, presenting all this different information. And then if I can get you to think, ultimately I know I can get you to grow. And if I can get you to grow and I can get you to think, then I feel like I've done my job. As we continue to move along and explore all the different features and functions in Cubase, as always, it's great to have you guys here, and I'll see you on the next video.